Good morning, afternoon, or evening. I am Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the attorney at Joy Disability. You're about to see what should be a question and answer format type of chat from our live session on a particular topic that we find that a lot of people keep asking about. So I'm sharing it here. If there are pieces that could have been added that weren't added during the live, because it's a kind of a fast-paced Q&A that we do every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You might just find that I added something to the end of it to give it a little more clarity and a little more details for those that are interested in that particular topic. So check to see if that's at the end. Otherwise, enjoy the video. Bye-bye. Can you explain the process of widow's benefits? Husband died 5 years ago. He was on Social Security. I'm on SSI disability. Been waiting 6 months now. Okay, so first of all, I'm sorry for your loss. That's terrible. How old are you? I don't know how old you are. You said you've been waiting 6 months now. Did you apply? I don't know where you're at, so I'm not sure what you want me to. If you are seeking widow's benefits, husband died 5 years ago. I don't know if you were on SSI probably after that, when he was, you no longer had the household income with him. I'm assuming you are between 50 and 60, Barbara. Otherwise, you won't be getting widow's benefits. I just need more details. So the fact that you've been waiting, I'm going to assume you mean you've been waiting on a widow claim. And it should, if you're over 50 and under 60, you should be able to, I'm trying to think of checking off on my criteria here. Yeah, it should just be a little simpler. Although I have a widow's case that they're doing the same thing. You would think they would just be like, I think what they're doing is they're reevaluating your disability since you got an SSI at some point. Maybe you were under 50, so all you had was SSI after your husband passed. And then now that you're over 50, I don't know, I'm speculating here. Now you can apply for the widows, and you've done that, and they're like, okay, now we just got to make sure that it is definitely within the 7-year period that it's required to be since he passed. So you've met that criteria. So then the question is she still disabled? They might be doing a CDR on you, in essence, because they have to find out, is she still disabled? If they just found you SSI disabled 6 months ago, or something recently, I would like to think if you're on a 3-year diary or a 5 to 7 year mine diary, why do they have to recheck you again? They already decided that you didn't even need to have a CDR for 5 years. So why wouldn't they just switch you to the widows and call it a day? And depending on how much the widows is, you may or may not be even needing SSI anymore. But I hope it beats the SSI amount because it's nice to get off SSI. You have so much more, I don't know, rights to do things. Arkansas. Gosh, I knew it was an A. Well, I didn't actually know it was an A. That's Ann. Ann's in Arkansas. Arkansas. So, hi, Ann. I've tried to get Ann to come on with me, but I haven't seen any positive. People are shy. That's all right. That used to be me. Dimple says coverage renews, resets in January. Okay, that's in 6 months. So assuming you're still fighting the good fight, that's something to think about. Sybil says, you get rid of one pain, then you notice another pain. Yeah, I think it's probably true. What did my father used to say to me? If I would complain about something hurting as a kid, he'd be like, well, maybe he was using a hammer at the time. He'd be like, well, if you want, put your hand out. I'll give you a pain in this finger, and you'll forget all about that pain in your foot. That's my dad. Yeah, we focus on the big one, and the little ones don't mean so much. So that's something, it's very hard to get out of the mindset. Good morning. The SSA just put out a little article online, but most people probably don't see them. I get email alerts from them. And it was just a reminder and I thought it was helpful because some of the things that they put out are really kind of impractical for everyday internet users. But this seemed a little more practical, and I wanted to reiterate it. It's when a widow will be eligible for benefits, because there's a few different times when he or she may, widow or widower. So let's just go over that really quick. A widow or widower may be eligible for benefits if they are age 50 Now, SSA didn't mention this in their article, but you have to also become disabled as that widower or widow within 7 years of the passing of the spouse. So your spouse passes, you become disabled, and you become 50, and all that happens within, well, the disability happens within 7 years of the passing of the spouse. You could be eligible for benefits on the spouse's work record, because you wouldn't necessarily be eligible on your own work record if you didn't have one sufficient at that time. And that could be a variety of reasons. Now, I remember a particular case when this happened. I was actually proving a disability case for someone, and then the issue arose that the spouse was passed. The unfortunate thing, and she would have gotten more benefits under the spouse's work record than her own. Like, she would still get them on her own, but they were much smaller. So she'd get them on her own if she proved her own disability, which we were able to do, but she could get more having proven disability if she could prove that she was married to the alleged spouse, which was the parent of her children. If she could prove that marriage. Ironically, she couldn't. She could never get a document saying it. And her children, even, they didn't know. It was before their time. It was all kind of understood, which, as children, we don't necessarily see our parents' certificate of marriage. So she never could prove that she was married to the gentleman that had passed. I don't really doubt that she was, but for whatever reason, and she had no recollection of even what state it was in. This is how bad off she was. So there was no, you have to go through your state vital statistics and all that stuff. And that is always left up to the person to have their marriage information. So she didn't prove that. And the kids never saw a certificate, anything of that nature. So that didn't pan out for her. But, for everybody else who actually keeps track of that stuff, it's worth noting that as early as 50, you could collect a benefit based on being a widow or widower, whether you have your own work record or not. You could have been a stay-at-home and not have one. At age 60 is the one we normally think of as a widow's benefit start date. I kind of consider it like a widow retirement age. Normally we can collect a spousal or ex-spousal benefit at 62 based on a prior spouse's work record. For widows, and by the way, they could be divorced widows, 60, it starts 2 years earlier. However, like the age 62 early taking of any kind of retirement benefit, this benefit will also be discounted. So if a widow or widower wants to take it at 60, they're going to be taking about 71.5% of what they would take as a widow if they waited until their full retirement age. So it is substantially decreased. And no, it doesn't pop up if you take it early once you hit retirement. Some people say, well, is it going to go up when I hit it? No, you're taking X years of additional payments. So let's say it's 6 years of additional payments. That's 6 times 12 months. That's 72 payments that the other person who waits till full retirement age isn't taking. So your discounted amount, your reduced amount for taking early is permanent. So that's a risk people can run. Is that going to be enough money later, or was it better to maybe plug a few more years of work in? And not have to take that. If widow's benefit is going to be the thing you rely on, so obviously you're going to weigh those competing amounts. Is my own benefit going to be more than the widow's? Doesn't matter, and I could take it. One thing about widow's benefits too, if you take it, it doesn't impact your own. If you had taken at 62 early spousal benefit, that's deemed as taking your own benefit, and you can't then later try to hop to your own record at the full amount later. That's not true with the survivor widow's benefit, and I hope they don't change that. If you take it early, it does not count. It's not deemed as having taken your own. So you can take the widow's benefit, let your own delay. And so you don't get that penalty if you take your own later. So that's kind of a nice thing. Thank God they didn't take that away from the widows and widowers, because they took a lot away in 2015 from spouses. So they didn't really touch this one, thank goodness. You can also collect a widow's benefit, a survivor benefit based on your spouse's work record. If you have a child, that person passes, and you have a child under your care who is under age 16. Or if they're disabled before the age of 22. So basically, we refer to this as the widow caretaker benefit. That widow benefit will end, though, when the child turns 16. So keep that in mind. If the child is disabled and deemed that by Social Security, whether it's through an SSI finding or what have you, then as long as that child remains disabled and being cared for by the widow or widower, that caretaker benefit can continue. Going back to the age 60 taking of the benefit, that requires that you're not married. However, you can take it later if you remarry, if your remarriage is after the age of 60. So if you collect a widow's benefit at 60 and remarry at 62, you don't lose your widow's benefit. If you were widowed at 58, had no benefit because you weren't 60 yet and you weren't disabled and you weren't a caretaker, and you remarry at 59, you just lost that. Now, if you get divorced, you might be able to revert back, but so just keep that in mind. Sometimes delaying that marriage till after 60, if what you want is that widow benefit, versus if you have a better one yourself, or you have to again weigh all those different amounts that will be had at different times, eligibility, and which ones would be impacted if you collect now versus later. So you can kind of weigh the options of taking now versus later. So anyway, I hope that helps you. That's basically 4 areas of widow or widower eligibility to keep in mind if, gosh forbid, you lose your spouse. And again, these can apply if you're divorced from that spouse as well. So, so pay attention, and I hope that helps someone who might otherwise have foregone benefits because they didn't know about it. Have a great day. Bye.